Yes, Mr. Lee.
Thank you, my lady. I call the first witness, Dr. Hartzenberg. And lady, my understanding is that the last exhibit was 4A's. That's from the record. I don't know if your registrar may assist and tell me if it's right or wrong. It was indeed, my lady, and also in respect of this witness, my lady, that she does not want to be televised.
What's the name of the witness, please?
It's Dr. Lore, L-O-R-E, Hartzenberg. L-O umlaut R-E, Hartzenberg.
Thank you. The name of this witness, or the image, no images of this witness, Dr. Hartzenberg, may be published in any form.
As the court pleases.
And can you just give an indication how long we're going to be?
Is it in respect of this witness?
No, not the witness.
My lady, we call 3 witnesses.
Yes.
None of them, I believe, will be long witnesses. And then there's a 4th person, that's the official witness, that's a person from the Department of Correctional Services, the Supervision Department.
Okay. And Mr. Nell, will the state be calling any witnesses?
Yes, we will be calling witnesses, my lady.
How many?
It's difficult to say at this stage because we cannot anticipate what the defence will lead,
Yes.
my lady, but at least 2.
Okay. So would I be correct that we will not need more than 1 week?
I will lead more than 1.
No, 1 week. We shall not need more than
1 week.
1 week.
I hope not, my lady.
I also believe not, my lady.
Okay, thank you. The witness may be sworn in, please.
Lore Marie Hartzenberg.
Do you have any objections or anything else?
None.
Do you swear that the evidence you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Raise your right hand and say so help me God.
So help me God.
You may be seated if you so wish, Doctor. Thank you.
Thank you, my lady. Dr. Hartzenberg, you have 2 documents in front of you, and I will make the same documents available to the court as exhibits 4Bs, 4B1, BBBB1, and BBBB2. BBBB1 is in fact your curriculum vitae, and 4Bs2 is your report in this matter.
That is so.
Yes, you
Thank
may
you, ma'am.
proceed.
Dr. Hartzenberg, what are your qualifications?
My qualifications are a BA, a diploma in tertiary education, a B.Ed Psych, a M.Ed in career orientation, an M.Ed Psych, and a Ph.D.
Now, for your doctorate, what was your doctorate in?
My doctorate was cross-cultural trauma counseling within the context of domestic violence.
When did you obtain your first degree?
1973.
And your doctorate?
My doctorate I handed in 2001.
And after leaving university, where did you practice and what did you do?
I was in private practice as a psychologist in Eladas Park in Pretoria.
For how long?
Since I was registered in 1998 as a psychologist.
And have you been practicing since?
I have been practicing since.
It says educational psychologist. Can you explain that?
I did not do the normal route of educational psychology, which is usually school-based. I did tertiary education, where I have been training students as well as other psychologists and social workers in my field of expertise.
And how did the trauma counselling come about?
I did my research in trauma counselling and became known as someone who does do trauma counselling. I'm known to, I'm considered an expert in sexual abuse. I do forensic cases, psychoforensic cases, in rape cases, sexual assault, and child molestation. But I also do general trauma counselling as well.
Now, the document that is marked 4B1, that is your curriculum vitae. Do you confirm the contents thereof?
I do.
Now, Dr. Hatzenberg, before I start with your evidence and dealing with your report that I'm going to ask you to read into the record, when we approached you to be a witness, what was your attitude?
Milady, my attitude from the outset was that I was Mr. Pistorius' therapist and that I was not going to become involved in the merits of the case. My role was as a therapeutic, psychotherapy, and support for Mr. Pistorius. So from the outset, I indicated that I would not become involved. However, I was recently approached by the defense, and I was requested to write a report regarding my observations and my impressions during psychotherapy. I thought very carefully about this, and I came to the decision that I would come and share with the court some of my observations that I made during psychotherapy.
Dr. Hatzenberg, when did you meet Mr. Pistorius?
Mr. Pistorius was referred to me for grief therapy by a colleague, and I saw him for the first time on the 23rd of February 2013.
And have you been seeing him since, consulting with him?
I've seen him throughout the 18 months that I've been involved with him, at times daily, other times weekly, other times monthly. It varied. It varied in times as well. Some sessions were short, and some sessions lasted up to 2 hours. So it varied.
Before we deal with your report, if you can just give us some general insight into those sessions. What were they all about?
Initially, it was very difficult in the conventional sense of giving psychotherapy, to have sessions with Mr. Pistorius. He was very emotional. There were sessions that we couldn't conduct some of the sessions. Some of the sessions were just him weeping and crying and me holding him. And then other sessions we could get somewhere. So it varied.
But it was all aimed at trauma counselling.
It was all aimed at initially grief counselling, but it eventually went over into trauma therapy.
With that in mind, Dr. Hartzenberg, if we then turn to the next exhibit, that is BBBB2, which is your report dated 1 October 2014. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Before reading it in, do you confirm the correctness of this report?
I do, my lady.
You may then proceed.
Clinical observations and impressions gained during psychotherapy with Mr. Oscar L.C. Pistorius. Point 1 is preamble. I, Lyra Marie Hartzenberg, attached my abridged curriculum vitae, setting out my qualifications and my field of expertise. The highest qualification obtained by me is a PhD in psychology, obtained from the University of Pretoria. My doctoral thesis and my doctoral examination dealt with cross-cultural trauma counselling within the context of domestic violence. I am, inter alia, a trauma therapist who has dealt with various forms of trauma during psychotherapy sessions in my private practice. Mr. Oscar Pistorius was referred to me by a colleague who was aware of my work in trauma therapy. He was referred for grief therapy after the shooting incident resulting in the death of Miss Reeva Steenkamp at his home on 14th February 2013. I also acted in a supportive and therapeutic capacity during his trial. I had my first consultation with Mr. Pistorius on the 25th of February 2013, and I have been involved in consultations with him for the past 18 months. Prior to this, I had no dealings or information with regard to Mr. Pistorius, other than that which I had occasionally read in the media. Mr. Pistorius and I had an agreement from the outset that I would not act as a witness in his trial. As his treating psychologist, I am not involved in the merits of the case. However, with Mr. Pistorius' consent, I ultimately agreed to prepare a report of my clinical observations and impressions gained during my professional involvement with him over a period of 18 months. 2. Clinical observations. Initially, Mr. Pistorius presented with acute stress reaction, ICD-10 code F43.0. Subsequently, prominent symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder, DSM-5 309.18 and ICD-10 code F43.10, and depression were noted. I referred him to a psychiatrist, Dr. Gert Bosch, for psychopharmacological treatment. Mr. Pistorius is currently still under Dr. Bosch's treatment. Mr. Pistorius presented in therapy with feelings of guilt and remorse, often overwhelming him or restricting his affect. Frequently, he was too emotionally drained for therapy to commence, and sessions had to be rescheduled. He frequently spent sessions weeping and often had to exit or excuse himself from a session due to retching. This mainly occurred when recounting his sensory perceptions of the shooting incident. Besides the retching, he presented with obvious physical symptoms of perspiring, a pale pallor, trembling, pacing up and down, which are all typical signs of anxiety and trauma. Point 3. Recurring therapeutic themes. 3.1. Loss of Miss Reeva Steenkamp. Mr. Pistorius was deprived of the opportunity to mourn the passing and loss of someone he loved immediately after the incident, as a result of the charge of premeditated murder, as well as the ever-present media focused on him. He was saddened that he could not attend Miss Steenkamp's memorial service and funeral. This would usually offer closure to a grieving person. exacerbating his grief was that he recognized that it was he who was ultimately responsible for the death of Ms. Steenkamp, resulting in unresolved guilt for him. His attempts to process Ms. Steenkamp's death and the circumstances that she died in has been an ongoing and uncompleted theme in psychotherapy. Although he did go through the expected stages of the grieving process, he kept on looping back to previous stages of grief, thereby remaining in an unresolved spiral of grief without resolution. This form of grief processing is also known as complicated grief. His initial shock and frequent crying defined the sessions at the outset, but was also present throughout the subsequent therapy as well as during this trial. He directed anger and blame toward himself, and at stages questioned God's grace and forgiveness as well as his own faith. His anxiety was noticeable and had an impact on his day-to-day functioning, including his ability to eat and sleep. Throughout the therapy sessions, Mr. Pistorius expressed his longing for Ms. Steenkamp and the void he experiences living without her presence. Mr. Pistorius has not been able to reach a stage of acceptance and healing in his grieving process. Mr. Pistorius' remorse with regard to his role in Ms. Steenkamp's death was unabated during therapy sessions. His concern for Ms. Steenkamp's parents was an unremitting theme throughout my contact sessions with him. He found it distressing that he could not make any personal and private contact with them to express his extreme sorrow and devastation at the loss of their daughter. The only opportunity he had to express this, as a result of Ms. Steenkamp's parents not wanting to meet him at that stage, was in public during the trial, and then he was attacked. He felt that he was damned if he did, and damned if he did not. Mr. Pistorius had a future planned with Ms. Steenkamp, to the extent that he paid a deposit on a house that he wanted to share with him. He had included her in his plans to accompany him to sports and business trips abroad. He lost his vision and his aspirations of building a future with Ms. Steenkamp when she died, leaving him bereft. Point 4. Consequences of the shooting incident for Mr. Pistorius. The nature of the charge of premeditated murder had a ripple effect nationally and internationally, for it played out on the world stage and on a 24-hour television channel in South Africa. This gave rise to numerous experts airing their views on Mr. Pistorius' character and the trial. He was often portrayed in an adverse light, which perpetuated negative perceptions of him to the public who rely on information from the media. This gave rise to a platform of abuse in the media and social networks that had a significantly detrimental effect on his emotional functioning and behavior before and during the course of the trial. The impact on his perception of self and his opportunity for healing was destroyed by the malevolent reports and public comment. Mr. Pistorius has acknowledged that he is essentially a lonely person who finds it difficult to form trusting relationships as a result of his career path and the pressure of international travel and fame. As a result of him standing accused of the premeditated murder of Ms. Steenkamp, he experienced the loss of the mutual friends he shared with Ms. Steenkamp. This was particularly devastating for him at the time when he needed the support of friends the most. He felt isolated as a result of this. Mr. Pistorius' fall from being an icon in world athletics, who was revered and celebrated, to being vilified and humiliated in some media reports and social networks, had a profound effect on his identity of self. Although he was aware and appreciative of the positive support he had also received, Mr. Pistorius experienced himself as utterly worthless, devastated, and guilt-ridden. This has resulted in a loss of his identity and self-belief, as well as the loss of his reputation, on which he felt his integrity was founded and judged by others. As a world-class athlete and celebrity, he had a platform to make a difference to other disabled and disadvantaged individuals worldwide, which was meaningful to him. He did this through his many different programs, for example, as an international ambassador for the Laureate Sports for Good Foundation. He feels he has now lost his voice to make a positive contribution to those disadvantaged communities he worked in and to the children with disabilities he was known to inspire. Mr. Pistorius felt that he worked hard to create this platform of activism for the advancement of others. Mr. Pistorius has been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder by various experts who have assessed him. The effects of PTSD are such that the flashbacks and the re-experiencing of the shooting will be mental images he will always carry with him, making it difficult for him to escape from this. The symptoms of intrusive memories, attempts at avoidance, for example, places and people that remind him of the incident, with persistent trauma-related emotions, increased emotional arousal or reactivity, known as hyperarousal, will be part of his life until such time that healing has taken place. Point 5, summary. Throughout my psychotherapy sessions with Mr. Pistorius, I've never found him to be anything other than a respectful, caring, and well-mannered person. Although he did at times show irritation and frustration, especially during the trial, this was not unexpected given the context within which this behavior presented. I never once saw him lose his temper, even when provoked by others or during his severe cross-examination by the state. I did, however, find him to be anxious, at times suspicious and hypervigilant, always being aware of his personal safety. This behavior formed part of his symptoms of PTSD. In my involvement with Mr. Pistorius, I can confirm his remorse and pain to be genuine. Mr. Pistorius expressed that without the support of his family and friends and his deep faith in God, he would not have been able to withstand the significant pressures that this trial has placed on him. The healing process and any form of closure that Mr. Pistorius is compromised and damaged by the constant negative attacks against him. He feels that this has been premised by inaccurate facts regarding the shooting incident. Mr. Pistorius expressed his horror at the leaked photographs of the scene of the shooting, viewing this as disrespectful to Ms. Steenkamp and others who are close to Ms. Steenkamp. The weight that the loss of Ms. Steenkamp by his own actions has had on Mr. Pistorius is incalculable and cannot be quantified. Added to this is Mr. Pistorius' awareness of the pain and suffering that the Steenkamp and Pistorius families have suffered as a result of Ms. Steenkamp's death. Mr. Pistorius is suffering from PTSD and major depressive disorder as diagnosed by Dr. Bosch, his psychiatrist, and confirmed in the psycholegal report of Professor Jonathan Scholes and Dr. R.G. Holmes. It is foreseen that Mr. Pistorius will require intensive and ongoing psychotherapy. What we are left with, my lady, we are left with a broken man who has lost everything. He has lost his love relationship with Ms. Steenkamp. He's lost his moral and professional reputation. He's lost friends. He's lost his career and therefore his earning potential and also his financial independence. On an emotional level, his self-perception, his self-worth and identity have been damaged to the extent that he is unlikely to fully recover from the consequences of the shooting incident that occurred on the 14th of February 2013.
I have no further questions. Thank you, my lady.
Yes,
This
Mr.
is the court, my lady. Like, I've now become accustomed to this. Report was handed to me moments before the court started. So I'll start with this and then ask the court indulgence just to consult with us.
Yes,
I have also not received any other reports of any professional people that may give evidence. Madam, may I start with the last paragraph, 5.6? One gets this in all arguments for mitigation. We're dealing with a broken man. What would your views be of the Steenkamp family? Would you not expect a broken family?
My lady, I have no doubt in my mind that the Steenkamp family must be suffering immense pain. And there is no doubt in my mind that they are a broken family.
I will need evidence to indicate that Mr. Steenkamp suffered a stroke as a result of what happened to his daughter in this case. Can you deny that? Would you expect that?
My lady, I'm not a medical person. I don't know Mr. and Mrs. Steenkamp personally. I accept that if this has happened, it could possibly be as a result of this, yes.
But you're a trauma counsellor. I will need evidence to say that Mrs. Steenkamp would just collapse on a floor in a house, crying uncontrollably of what happened. That is what one expects from a mother that lost a child, am I right?
I'm sure that is right.
We're now dealing with a broken man, but he's still alive. He can still pursue his career and walk outside, and he has intention to do that, am I right?
I do not know that he has the intention to do that, my lady. In the 18 months that I was involved with him, he did not show any inclination or intent to continue with any type of career.
Are you telling me that in your counselling of this accused, you never discussed what will happen after the trial, how he'll continue being an athlete? Not at all.
The severity and the degree of post-traumatic stress disorder suffered by Mr. Pistorius, we took one day at a time.
But then answer the question, please. Just answer the question. Did you discuss that he will continue his career after the trial?
I did not, my lady. We took one day at a time.
Why would a trauma counsellor not do that?
The severity of his trauma was such that every session that he came was dealing with the incident.
Should, as a trauma counsellor, you not give him hope for the future?
gave him hope for the next day.
And hope would include the man who lived for athletics to continue with his career or not?
Milady, I think that's a question for Mr. Pistorius to answer himself.
You know, that's not the way out, madam, not at all. I'm dealing with a trauma counsellor that wants the court to accept her views. And I'm asking you why you did not do that. Why did you not discuss his continuing career as an athlete?
We did not discuss that. He was, in sessions, he was so tired that sessions couldn't take place. But I do recall one incident, and I said to him, one day, when this is all over, what would you like to do? And he said to me that his uncle had a school in Mozambique, and that nothing would make him happier to go and work with the children in the rural school in Mozambique. That he did tell me.
Okay. Is that all, madam? Because, you know, we're dealing with his career as an athlete, and you slipped that in, it's fine. Is there anything about his athletic career that you discussed with him? That's the question.
No, we didn't.
Do you know that he resumed training?
I know that he I think he went to the University of Pretoria's. He ran one day at the University of Pretoria. I had nothing to do with that. It wasn't something we discussed. That's all I know. I know he trains some mornings in the gym at the house.
I just want to get a clear response from you. As far as him resuming his athletic training, you know of him having been to the track once.
I know him being to the track once because it was in the media, and I know about that, yes.
Now, I see you saying it was in the media, so you did not discuss it with him.
We did not discuss we definitely did not discuss his future as an athlete, because as he sat there before me, there was no future as an athlete.
Now, can I ask you, okay, firstly, the report. When did you finalize this report? I see it's dated the 1st of October.
Yes.
Is that when you handed it in?
Yes.
And it's now the 13th of October?
Yes.
I see. Now, in consultation with either the accused or the defense team, was there any discussion about Mr. Pistorius after the trial? What would happen with him?
No, milady, there wasn't. Not from my side. Not from my side. I explained to Mr. Pistorius from the beginning, I used the analogy of hurdles. And I said to him, it's like running a race with hurdles, and we need to get over each hurdle as we get to it. And that is how we focused on staying in the here and the now, and dealing with what he had to deal with in the here and the now. So this is the hurdle, this is the one we're getting over, and that is how we worked in our therapy.
Now, I've read your report fleetingly, and at paragraph 5.6, you said he has lost his career and therefore his earnings potential and all his financial independence. So that, am I right, if I make the inference, if I read that sentence, that you're saying he will not go back to the track and he will not pursue the career of a professional athlete?
Lady, those were my impressions. As I said in the heading, my impressions. That is what I think.
So
I cannot. I cannot speak for Mr. Pistorius, whether he's going to do this or whether he isn't going to do this. I think that there are many things that are going to depend on what is going to happen in the future.
But for the one person that spent time with him from February 2013 throughout the trial up until now, your impression is that he's lost his career. Am I right?
As it stands now, that is my impression.
So whatever other witnesses will testify today that the man has got potential, he can still do well, the court should take that into account, you would frown on that.
Milady, of course he has potential. He has many, many facets of potential. The fact of the matter is, it depends what happens from here on, what is going to happen with him. He didn't have the energy. He didn't have the motivation to even talk about going on with his career. Anything can happen. Of course he's got the potential. I'm not saying he doesn't have the potential.
All I'm doing is I'm dealing with one paragraph, 5.6. One paragraph, your last paragraph. You indicate to the court, take the following into account, and I've marked them. He has lost his love relationship with Steenkamp, with Ms. Steenkamp. That's number one. Am I right? You can follow it if you want to. He has lost his moral and professional reputation. That's point number 2. He has lost his friends. That's point number 3. So then the court should take those 3 into account, and he has lost his career. But you don't even know that he's lost his career, but that is something that you want the court to take into account. Why would you do that?
Milady, as it stands now, and we don't know what the future holds, I don't know what the future holds. As it stands now, he has lost his career. He's lost all his endorsements, all his sponsorships. So as it stands now, he has lost his career. What happens in the future, I don't know.
Good. Let's deal with the future. He's lost his love relationship. He will be able to love somebody else. Because we're talking future, you're talking now. Am I right? He will be able to love somebody else later.
I wish I had a crystal ball, then I would know as well.
But
I don't know. I cannot answer that question. I cannot see into the future. I can only deal with that I know, that I saw in my consulting rooms, in my therapy with Mr. Pistorius. That's all I can deal with.
you see, the one thing I read about your paragraph 5.6, and I'm sure you'll agree, this deals with Mr. Pistorius. Shame. He's lost his love relationship. He has lost his moral and professional reputation. He has lost his friends. He has lost his career. This whole report deals with Mr. Pistorius and just him. Am I right?
Lady, I only dealt with Mr. Pistorius, so I can only report on Mr. Pistorius and my dealings with him.
But as a professional person giving evidence, indicating to the court all your qualifications, don't you think it should have been more balanced in your reporting?
Lady?
By saying what society would want, perhaps?
Lady, I will leave that up to the court to decide. That is not my role. It's the court's role.
Have you ever been involved in the counseling of a family that whose daughter or son or just child was killed during a traumatic experience, criminal experience? Have you ever been involved in that?
I have been involved with parents who have lost their children in traumatic circumstances. Yes.
Criminal acts?
I cannot now think of any specific case with that.
Now, in paragraph, I might have to come back to it because I haven't had the report, so I'm going to run through a couple of these paragraphs and then perhaps revisit some. In paragraph 3.1.2, you deal with his grief and his recognition that he was ultimately responsible for the death. Am I right?
That's what it says.
Have you
Milady.
followed the court's judgment?
The judgment, I was out of the country when the judgment was made, milady.
Now, are you telling me, madam, that you drafted the report, you came to court, gave evidence without having had access to the judgment of this court?
I know what judgment was found, that it was culpable homicide. And I did read, but I didn't read the whole judgment. No, I didn't.
So you didn't read the whole judgment. What did you read?
I read what was that a finding of culpable homicide had been made. I wasn't in the country.
You see, madam, I don't blame you for not being in the country. I'm ever surprised that a professional person would give evidence on sentence in this court and not having studied the judgment. That is my surprise, and that's why I want you to answer to.
I think I have answered that, milady.
No, you said, should I just say, except that you said, I did not. You did not read the full judgment. Don't you think it's irresponsible for a professional person giving evidence on sentence not to know the judgment? So the question is, don't you think it's irresponsible?
I will leave that up to the court.
No, madam, I'm asking you. You can't leave things to court. I'm asking you, don't you think it's irresponsible?
I'm not here to make any submissions on the merit of the judgment or any of the others. I'm just here to give my observations. And that is the sole reason why I am here.
It's unfortunately not that easy, madam. You see, sentence, when one discusses sentence, the reference point of sentence is the judgment. Do you at least know that?
I do.
So if you know that, and you gave your observations, why did you not just study the judgment?
Because I have not put anything in my report regarding the sentence or even mitigation. All I've done was I've come to stand here and to give the court the impressions, my clinical observations and impressions gained during my psychotherapy. That is the sole purpose of why I'm standing here.
May I ask you, have you had a session with Mr. Pistorius after the judgment?
I have.
Was the judgment discussed?
It was discussed to a certain extent.
What extent?
To the extent that we now have to look at we now have a judgment. The court has made a finding, and now the next step, the next hurdle, would now be the sentencing. To that extent.
Was his view still that he never intended to fire the gun when he spoke to you after the judgment?
Excuse me?
Was his view still that he never intended firing the gun when you spoke to him after the judgment?
We never discussed
You see.
post-judgment anything to do with the evidence. As far as I'm concerned, the evidence was before the court and it was dealt with. So no, we didn't discuss that.
Now then explain to me, ultimately responsible for the death of Ms. Steenkamp in paragraph 3.1.2. Is that, what is his responsibility? Ultimately responsible, what does that mean?
Lady, it's exactly what it says. Mr. Pistorius accepted that through his actions, Ms. Steenkamp died.
Why do you say that?
Because that is the version that the court had. And that's the version is common knowledge.
No, so the version that the court included in the judgment, is that what this meant there?
I don't understand that.
No, you said it's a version. Is it the version that you got before the judgment or after?
Mr. Pistorius' telling of what happened from the very first day I had my involvement started with him has never, ever changed. It's been the same, and in acute detail at that.
That it was an accident, the gun went off. He never intended firing into the door. That never changed.
That he said from the beginning has stayed the same.
No, madam. Listen, I know what you want to say, but please listen to the question. The fact that the gun accidentally went off and never aimed at he never wanted to fire into the door, that never changed. Am I right?
What he told me was...
Madam, please, I don't want to know what he told you. Just answer the question. You will have opportunity.
Sorry, I don't understand the question then.
Okay, let me explain it. His version in evidence, one of his versions in evidence, was that he never intended firing the gun into the toilet cubicle. The gun went off by accident. Is that the version you had or not?
The version that I had was exactly what the evidence was before the court, and that he stood there after hearing a sound and he heard another sound and he fired the shots. That I had no reason. I was not the forensic psychologist. I wasn't dealing with cold, hard, objective facts. My role as therapist is there to support, to form a trusting relationship, to offer a safe space where he could talk about what had happened. It was not my role to try and establish objective facts. That was not my role.
Something different. Do you know if he's ever received psychological help before you were involved with him?
What's your question again?
Psychological help from a professional.
I'm not directly... no, I don't directly have knowledge of that. I know he's been through traumatic experiences where he may have been given help, but I myself am not aware of that.
Now, then, do you know anything about his relationship with Samantha Taylor?
I know that he was involved in a few relationships. We never dealt with any of his relationships in depth. That was not part of our psychotherapy sessions. Our psychotherapy sessions were focused on the trauma that this whole incident had and the effect that it had on him, as well as on other people who were also close and involved with Ms. Steenkamp, as well as with Mr. Pistorius. And our therapy sessions were mainly on the guilt that he had, that this had happened. So I knew about relationships and even friends. He used to tell me about friends' names. We didn't deal with that.
Okay, so I just want to get an answer because then I won't ask follow-up questions. You never discussed his relationship with Samantha Taylor? Not at all.
No, it's not that he didn't discuss it. We didn't discuss it. He mentioned it. He mentioned a relationship he had at school, and that he was still friends with this young woman. And then that he was in a relationship with Samantha Taylor, and that the relationship didn't work out, and that he shortly after that met Miss Steenkamp. As far as I remember, it was not my focus of my therapy, but as far as I remember, he said that he met her, Miss Steenkamp. The day that he met her, he didn't have a date, and somebody organized a date with Miss Steenkamp for him that very same day. We didn't discuss his relationships in depth with the other girls, no.
Now, what is perhaps relevant is, did they at all tell you that Samantha Taylor's mother, Trish Taylor, in discussions with him, asked him to seek psychological help, and he promised that he would? Do you know anything about that?
I have never met Samantha Taylor or her mother, so I would definitely not know that what was spoken between them, and I have no knowledge of that whatsoever.
Okay. Now, this relationship with the deceased in this matter, it's a very young relationship.
That's true.
When did it start?
I don't have the dates, milady. All I know is that he saw a picture of her with friends of his, and the day that he had to go to some sports award, and he didn't have a date, as I've already said, this friend organized a date with Miss Steenkamp. I don't even know what the dates are. That's as far as my knowledge goes.
And do you know how their relationship developed? That's now between the deceased and the accused.
Developed?
Developed. I mean, they've been on this date to the sports awards. Do you know what happened after that? If he was out of the country, when did they see each other? How many times did they see each other? Do you know anything about that?
No, I didn't. All I know is what we discussed in therapy concerning their relationship and the void that he felt. He felt he'd met the right person. He felt that it was somebody he could and wanted to introduce to his family. In his heart and mind, Miss Steenkamp was the one.
That's what he said to you.
That's what he said to me.
And he also said to you, she was the one person that he wanted to take along with him internationally to athletic meetings. Or not?
He said he wanted to share everything in his life with her. That is why he wanted her to share a home with him, and he wanted her to accompany him when he went away.
Was that the first person he wanted you to accompany him on trips away?
I have no idea.
If I put to you that I'll need evidence to say that he wanted Samantha Taylor to join him at the Olympic Games, and he really tried hard to get her there, that would make, how would you, that's possible.
I have no knowledge of that, so I cannot comment
So
on that.
there was a a person before Reeva that he also wanted to share his athletic meetings with him?
I think Mr. Pistorius always had someone in his life. So I can accept that before Ms. Steenkamp, there was someone else, and before that someone else, there was someone else. I think he was in 4 relationships, as I understood it. So he always had someone in his life.
You see, also, if I just read your report, and I haven't pinpointed it, but I will if you want to, paragraph 4. Consequences of the shooting incident. In the first paragraph, you deal with the effect of the charge of premeditated murder that rippled nationally, internationally, played out on a stage for 24 hours television channel in South Africa. And that had impact on him. That's what you're trying to say.
It most definitely had an impact on him. It had a significant impact on him.
But the strangest thing is, during the trial, he visited a nightclub in the early morning hours in Johannesburg, went out with friends. Or he, on his version with a cousin, but we'll deal with that. Does that make sense?
It does, milady.
Does it? Explain that. What are you looking for, madam?
Milady, in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, there are different criteria, and one of the criteria is that in hyperarousal, that the person can sometimes to get away from the trauma, they sometimes what is called here risky behavior. So in other words, he would go out to try and get away from his own nightmares, his own thoughts, his own feelings.
I see. Where are you reading? Which criteria are you reading at the moment? You're dealing with the DSM-5?
I'm dealing with it, yes.
Yes. You're reading criteria for what?
The hyperarousal criteria. E. Marked alterations in arousal and reactivity associated with the traumatic events, beginning or worsening after the traumatic event has occurred, as evidenced by 2 or more of the following: irritable behavior and angry outbursts with little or no provocation, typically expressed as verbal or physical aggression towards people and objects, reckless and self-destructive behavior, hypervigilance, exaggerated startle response, problems with concentration, and sleep disturbances, either difficulty in falling or staying asleep or restless sleep.
Is that the criteria for which disorder?
Post-traumatic stress
PTSD.
disorder.
Okay. So people suffering from PTSD may do one of those things that you've read.
They may do one of those things.
But we had Mr. Pistorius under counseling from you. We had him in a house where people were looking after him, and at a stage, a critical stage in the trial, he still did that. You say that was behavior you would expect.
It's not behavior that I would expect, but it falls within the criteria of PTSD. It could happen.
Could happen. It could happen tomorrow as well.
It depends on on where he is with the therapy and the post-traumatic stress disorder.
But it happened. This we're talking about. I have the dates here, but I think we're talking about July. And am I wrong? I'm sure the defence would indicate to me. I don't think the date is of such. Let me just. But I think it's July. We're dealing with July. We're now in October, so it can happen tomorrow as well.
I'm not sure which incident Mr. Null is referring to.
What incident are you referring to?
No, I'm not referring to any incident. I'm just saying that these are the criteria.
Okay.
So any such behaviour
So any such
is
behavior
described in the DSM-5 in the criteria for post-traumatic stress disorder.
No.
So I don't know which specific incident Mr. Null is actually referring to.
What do you think I referred to? I mean, you referred to the DSM-5 when I asked you a question. What do you think I'm referring to?
I think Mr. Null is referring to some or other incident.
Which incident?
I have no idea. That's what I'm saying.
Have you discussed any incidents with Mr. Pistorius in your trauma counselling?
I have.
After the arguments in this matter before judgment, to discuss incidents that happened then, July this year.
I'm aware of an incident that was reported. I've been that was reported in the media. I've been informed that there was a closed circuit television that indicates that was reported was not accurate. And Mr. Pistorius and I dealt with that, the reasons why it happened, and also the way ahead, how to deal with his anxieties and his trauma in a more constructive manner.
Now, interesting. So you've discussed the fact that there was closed circuit television of this incident. Which incident are we talking about?
The incident that I know of is the last incident that happened somewhere in Johannesburg.
Now, you're very vague. Somewhere in Johannesburg, where? What happened?
A lady at my age. I'm not au fait with the nightclubs of Johannesburg. I actually don't know. And I didn't discuss it. The specifics of where it happened was not important to me. What important to me was that it had happened and why had it happened and what there was to learn from this. That was what I concentrated on.
What do you know about the deceased in this matter?
Only what Mr. Pistorius told me. And of course, the photographs I've seen of her. And the photographs that I know he carries around with him of her, that he showed me.
You know anything about her dreams, what she wanted to do in life?
I don't know in detail, except that he told me that she was involved in projects and that she was a model. We mostly spoke about their relationship as far as that was concerned.
Do you know anything about her background, how she grew up, family life, house?
I know that she grew up in PE, that she loved horse riding, that she had a horse riding accident. And I know that she was part of a TV show.
But the fact that she grew up in PE, the fact that she was in she loved horse riding, she was involved in an accident, did he tell you that?
No, I read that. He told me about their relationship. That's what he told me.
Lady, may I have adjournment to just go through the report with Brigadier Labuschagne sitting behind me. Lady, it will take half an hour. May I ask that it's 25 to 11. Lady, may I ask that we adjourn till 11:15, and with the proviso that if I need more time, I will inform the court if that is possible.
So if you don't come to tell us, we are here at 11:15.
At 11:15. Yes,
Court will adjourn.